my first question is essentially which came first, the cheese shop or the bistro, and what kind of made you decide to straddle the line between those two industries? So you just want to start off?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Dean. I've been in Fort Collins since '86. Okay. So I'm, like a lot of folks, came here, went to undergraduate, found a girl, married her, graduated in 1990, and then we just never went back home. Nancy's originally from Connecticut. I'm originally from Dallas. And we've just have made a life, a lifelong life here. And so it's been a great place we've raised 2 kids. So I've got a 24-year-old and a 21 turning 22-year-old.
Okay.
Next month, April 4th, they're coming up fast.
No kidding, yeah.
And it's just been a great place. The first 20 years or so I worked in the nonprofit faith-based world. Okay. And then got laid off in 2008 when the economy tanked. And then when the economy tanked, I stumbled into a new MBA program here at CSU. At the time, it was called Global Social Sustainable Enterprise. Okay. Now it's been rebranded into the Impact MBA. Okay. And so I did the Impact MBA from 2009 through winter of 2010. And so I graduated December of 2010 from that.
Got it.
And then in February of 2011 is when my wife and I and my youngest brother Nate hatched this idea to open up a cheese shop in Fort Collins. So the longer fast answer to your question is the shop came first.
Got it.
And so we opened up the shop on Pine Street. It was a way to leverage my youngest brother's culinary background. By that point, he'd been in the culinary world about 10 years. He was in between restaurants trying to figure out next steps. I had just graduated with my MBA, so I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. It really didn't matter to me what it was. Sure. And so part of what I like to talk about is that there's entrepreneurship is transportation to different things. And so for my brother, entrepreneurship was about transportation to his passion for the culinary world. Right. And for me, this entrepreneurship was about transportation just to business. We could have opened a coffee shop, we could have opened some sort of production, we could have done a lot of different things. I just wanted the experience of opening, creating something from nothing, right? Which is a big part of what entrepreneurship is about, and just kind of growing a business from zero to whatever I decide that's going to look like.
Of course.
And so we're now, as of the end of this month, we're now into year 10 on the shop side.
No kidding. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a big deal. And then we're into year 8 on the bistro side.
Okay.
And so part of what we joke about amongst the 3 of ourselves is that we really thought we were opening a cheese shop. That was our original concept. But once we introduced tables with a little bit of wine, and that was really about reducing food waste, if there's always little bits and pieces of cheese left over after you've cut everything down. Right. And so for us, this cheese on slates was about reducing food waste. But then people started Fort Collins loves to eat and drink, which I'm sure you heard from the Odells too.
Oh, absolutely.
And so people started intentionally coming in more for the tables than they did for the shop. And so we had to go from 2 tables to 4 tables to 6 tables to 8 tables. Okay. And then in the little space on Pine Street that's less than 800 square feet, we were serving we could seat about 30 people between a 4-butt bar and the tables and some tables out front on a small patio. Okay. And so about a year into that, the space right next door to the Silver Grill, which is another really interesting story if you ever have a chance to go talk to those guys. They're not quite as old as the Town Pump, but they're pretty close. I think 1910 or 1914 or something like that.
Yes, I do recall Sarah mentioning Silver Grill has been around for a long time.
And so to be next door to them is a really big deal because they're really, back in the 70s and 80s, I guess people were coming to Old Town to go to the Town Pump, but they were either coming to go to the Cupboard or to go to the Silver Grill. So those 2 establishments were at their time really kind of the cornerstone of Old Town. So to be right next door to them, to the Silver Grill is something special. So at that point, we split the business in 2.
Got it.
And so we kept the shop on Pine Street. We spun off the bistro as its own legal entity. So we have 2 separate businesses: the Welsh Rabbit Bistro and the Welsh Rabbit Shop. And there are 55 steps right over the corner from each other.
No kidding. So it was a very evolutionary process.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was really just responding to what the market wanted. And like I said, the joke was we thought we were opening a cheese shop, but what Fort Collins really wanted was a bistro. Right. But the shop really supports the bistro, so it didn't make sense to shut down the shop. And so we've kept both of them opening and operating. And We've had various conversations about shutting one or the other down during kind of different times. But,
yeah.
I think unless something more traumatic than the pandemic happens, I think we'll keep both businesses open.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So originally opening up a cheese shop and then having to eventually open up the bistro I'm assuming that put a lot more on your plate, because you did mention you have considered closing down one or the other.
Right.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah. So and then for me, the other thing that happened at the same time to opening the shop is that the College of Business MBA program contacted me and asked me to be involved in the traditional track MBA, basically as a glorified GA, graduate assistant. So helping, because the CSU MBA program has always had a distance component to it, and so. In any class, in any MBA class, there might be up to 40 students in the classroom, but there's another 40 to 120 that are remote.
Okay.
And so all the way back into the 70s, CSU MBA was mailing out VHS tapes to students out, and then those students interact with the graduate assistant that helps the professor manage those sections. And so I was doing that while we were launching the Welsh Rabbit, because one, it kept me involved in academia, which I was enjoying.
Right.
Two, it got me a paycheck.
Right.
Which I didn't have to pull money out of the businesses. And then three, it started getting me on the benefits payroll, because we were looking for a way to get our kids in and out of school debt free. Oh, and once you get past 50% employment at CSU, whether it's temp employment or like a tenure track professor, you get full benefits. Okay. And so once I got beyond 50%, that got us in the game to get both of my kids in and out of school at CSU debt free. So my son just graduated last May, debt free from here, and then my daughter will graduate not next month, but May, a year out.
Sure.
And we'll get her out debt free as well.
Well, that is a well thought out strategy. Yeah. I'm sure they appreciate that.
Yeah,
I had to go to the Marine Corps to get my school paid for, so that's wonderful on your part. That's really impressive, and like I said, I'm sure that they appreciate that. So going into my second question, which I think you kind of answered, but kind of didn't.
Yep.
What was the catalyzing moment in your life that convinced you to open up a cheese shop and bistro in Fort Collins? So I know that you mentioned it wasn't specifically the cheese shop; it was more so just any business. But what made you decide that you wanted?
It really was about wanting. It was kind of this confluence of all these events of getting laid off in 2008, then doing my MBA. I had pitched a couple of ideas to my wife historically about some entrepreneurial things that I wanted to do, but she just wasn't on board.
Right.
Part of it was her risk tolerance. Part of it was where our family was at. The kids were younger. We had a house that was partially undone, and there's these things. And so then you fast forward to graduating, and I think part of it was just having the experience of the MBA behind me gave me more confidence in myself, Nancy more confidence in me. It was also the kids were older now.
Right.
And then it also really was about that my brother was going to be coming on board with us as well. And the three of us really made up this really great team that I had kind of the business background, to drive all the behind the scenes stuff. My wife is a very methodical, planned out person. And then Nate, of course, had 10 years of culinary.
Of course. And
so it was just that, where we were at in the life of our, individually, where I was at with my experience, where we're at in the life of our kids, and then bring my brother on board. Those four things really coalesced around this idea of, hey, we can open a cheese shop.
No kidding.
And for me, it was just, I've already said it, so I'll say it again, but for me, it really was about this, okay, I want to start something. I want to create something. I want to be my own boss. I want to see what it takes to, get into the community of my town that I love, Old Town Fort Collins specifically, and then just starting to step that out and what that looks like, methodically over the years.
Okay. So how is it then running a business with your wife and your brother? Because I think, as far as I understand, running a business is very challenging and very demanding. How has that affected those dynamics? I mean, you mentioned that you're a well-oiled machine. You're a good team.
I don't know if we're well-oiled, but we are a good team. We have been a good team. So there's a little bit past tense for some of it. Sure. For my wife and I, we've always enjoyed being together and working together. So even though
that's wonderful.
In my previous life, what I call my previous life of being, employed in the faith-based and nonprofit community, Nancy and I have always enjoyed, we're on to our second house now that we're fixing, and I don't know if I say that we're flipping it, but we bought an old house that needed a lot of work.
Okay.
And so we've always enjoyed just working together, being together. So for us, taking this next step of being in a business together, in some ways was a natural progression.
Right.
And so for us, it works because we don't really top out on too much time together. Which sounds odd, but a lot of married couples really do, whether they explicitly understand that or implicitly, they really do look for that time apart when one or both of them are working and then they come back together in the home.
Right.
And you hear a lot of the conversation, a lot of times it's in joking form, but like when one of them retires and comes home, the other one's saying, "Why are you here all the time? You're in my hair. Go find something to do."
Right.
But for Nancy and I, just that idea that we're a team that is looking outward together, saying we're going to accomplish this together, has just been good. We have to learn how to not have conversation about work. So Sundays for us is really important, where we just don't talk about work. We don't do work. We don't have technology. For my brother, my youngest brother, it was really about reconnecting as adults, because he is 6 years my junior. And so when I left for college at 18, he was 11, 12. Okay. And so we never had really connected much beyond that.
Right.
And so then when we opened the business together, it was really a chance for us to reconnect as adults. And he and I were very intentional in saying, okay, yes, we're brothers, but we're also business partners. And so sometimes we would literally say, okay, we need to take off the brother hat and put on the business hat, and let's have conflict, or let's have a conversation around what our business is together.
Right.
And so we've tried to, even though we're brothers and that gives us a good foundation of relationship,
right,
we still have to operate as business partners sometimes.
Right.
And that's actually part of the past tense now, is that Nate, as of this year, January of this year, has stepped out of the business.
Okay.
And so he, now he's been in the, he was in the culinary world for 25 years. The pandemic was really hard. And so he actually took a sabbatical last year for 6 months from January through June, came back, rested, but didn't come back with that passion, that fire, that creativity that you really need as a chef.
Right.
To operate. And so he and I had another conversation in December, 4 months ago in December, and he just said, "Yeah, I'm just basically not happy." And for me, it's like, the way I view entrepreneurship, and frankly even work, is that if you're not enjoying your work, if it's work, I think that number is lower, 75% to 85%. If you're not enjoying work 75 to 85% of the time, then you're either in a season, which is fine, or you're in a wrong career.
Got it.
And you need to be brave, proactive to figure out what you want to do and change.
Right.
I think with entrepreneurship, you should be having fun 85 to 95% of the time.
Right.
And when you're not having fun, then I think it's time to look at something else.
Okay.
And so for Nate, that really was a long period where he was just kind of slogging and in the trenches. And so we're still navigating what it looks like ownership shares wise. But he's, as of January 1, he's out 100% out of the day-to-day. And
wow.
He's, we meet either remotely, kind of where he's at, we'll meet once a month and just be brothers and hang out. I might ask a few questions.
Sure.
Yeah, so he's out of the business now.
That's interesting.
Businesses, yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I hope that necessarily doesn't affect your dynamic as family, him having to step out and
yeah, that was a big conversation, because we're very intentional in saying, he said, Dean, I don't want to step out if it's going to put you in a hard place. I'm going to leave you hanging.
Right.
And the awkward conversation for me, so he was feeling awkward because he didn't want to leave me in the lurch.
Right.
I was feeling awkward because I could tell he wasn't passionate.
Of course.
And he was frankly getting in the way.
Oh, wow. No
and
kidding.
So it's like, and so we had this kind of this aha, or this, all right, let's really be honest moment here.
Right.
Where I just said, Nate, you're not going to leave me in the lurch. Thank you for saying that. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, frankly, brother, it'd be easier if you stepped out because you're just kind of, dead weight's too harsh, but
not holding things back.
You're an added complexity than if you're out, because Nancy and I still have lots of vision and energy and ideas for what both businesses can be. But if we're navigating you just not really wanting to be engaged, it just slows the process down.
No kidding.
And so we've actually exited really well. Of course, there's some sadness, there's some frustration, but that's just emotional things that you work through on your own. But then Nate and I will talk about those things as well.
Right.
But it's, blood comes first. Relationship comes first. Whether it's blood, whether it's friendship, relationship comes first. And so
that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that was kind of resolved in a way where you could still remain intact as a family.